Another video. Today we're going to take a look at some forex pairs, which includes the dollar index as well as GBP USD, NZD USD, AUD USD, Euro USD, Usdcf as well as Usdcad. Now we are going to add to what's list for this week on our new weekly market breakdown. Now if you are new to the channel, a sub would be appreciated, as I provide valuable educational content on a daily basis. And if you enjoy the video, please smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. And as always, just let me know down in the comments below exactly what it is that you would like for me to cover in my next video. Now, yesterday I gave you guys a full breakdown on what you can expect from the stock market this week. The same fundamental data is going to apply. We've got the NFP coming out this week. We've got the PMI. We've got the JJO. We've got the average hourly earnings coming out. We also have the unemployment rate and all of that stuff. I'll also explain what they mean individually, and you can check that video out. I published it for yesterday, so if you do trade the Nasdaq and all of those stuff, I made a full breakdown for that day yesterday as well. Now we're going to start with the dollar index here. Now if you start on the monthly time frame, what do we see? Firstly, we can see how the market is currently testing and rejecting strong monthly resistance. The market had also come back to test this massive liquidity area that it had grabbed in the past before, and we can see how the market is slowly starting to pull back there as well. Now, is the pullback further down expected? Well, potentially we could see it. We can see that this whole area over here that the market is currently testing over here, this market here acted as resistance not once but twice. The market is back to test that level as well. We can expect a slight pullback and then potentially see a further continuation depending on the PMI and the NFP and the unemployment data that we are going to get by Friday. On the weekly time frame, what do we see? Now, from a weekly perspective, we can firstly see the market gave us this massive impulse. After an impulse, we got the correction, and if you take your Fibonacci from the low to the high of this massive correction, you can see we had a pullback to the 0.50, which is normally what you expect after a massive bull run. It's a 50% pullback before the continuation. Now, on the daily time frame, we can see here based off last week's close, the market has started this consolidation phase. Now, the market is currently trading, basically just trading sideways. Apart from that, we can also see how the market last week had broken below this very important structure, and I explained all of the reasons why I could see that melted the downside. Potentially, I do want to see the market continue low and hit this level, and then from there we could definitely expect that bull run. But because we are expecting high impact news coming through on Wednesday, there is a high possibility that we could see the dollar index start this consolidation phase up until that data comes out on Wednesday, and then from there we could potentially see that continuation to the downside or to the upside. But for now, I'm expecting the DXY to be bullish for the short term, because we're expecting this market to continue trading sideways there as well. Now, if the market wants to, and we get negative PMI data, we can see the dollar index slip, come back, test that level of support as resistance, continue lower, hit this level, and start that rally to the upside as anticipated, with interest rate hikes coming in there as well. Next up, we have GBP USD. Now, if you look at GBP USD here, we're going to start on the monthly time frame. We can firstly see how GBP USD had been very bearish. Now, we can also see how the market had printed this equal low, and I spoke about GBP USD, expecting all of that, explaining all of the reasons why I expect that move to the upside. Full for the lateral part of last week, that is exactly what the market has given us. Now, we can obviously see that the market is now, it started that pullback. Now, the market is also now testing this, this area over here, acted as support, resistance, market broke below that, came tested as a resistance, support, back to tested as a resistance. Now, we can expect a pullback before we see any continuations there to the further upside if need be. And then here on the weekly time frame, we had this massive impulse, we had that correction again. Excuse me, again, if you do look left, you will see that the market is this area over here has also been tested and rejected aggressively in the past as well, giving us a further indication that we can expect a slight pullback before that continuation to the downside. On the daily time frame, what do we see? We can see on the daily time frame the market is testing and rejecting the strong level of resistance. Now, we can see our price action played out very well. The resistance got broken, became support. We had that level of resistance that also got broken. Market never came back to test it as support. Now, we can definitely expect a pullback before we can see the continuation. Now, you have to listen to me very carefully, ladies and gentlemen, before we could potentially see a continuation to the upside there as well. The continuation to the upside is not guaranteed until we get that positive PMI, well, depending on the PMI data that we're going to receive. It's one of the NFP data that we could potentially see. The market is going to pull back, then we could potentially see the market start trading sideways, and then depending on the data that we are going to get, we will get that break and then to the downside. Alternatively, if we don't get that data, then you can expect that move to the upside before that continuation there as well. But normally before high impact news gets released, the market tends to move sideways due to uncertainty about what the data is going to be. So as a retail trader, this sort of move to the downside definitely expected. So market needs that liquidity between now, Tuesday or Monday, and Tuesday, as well as Wednesday, my good friends. Let me just bring this down. Next up, we've got the NZD USD. Now, NZD USD on the monthly time frame, what do we see? First, we can see how the market printed a strong level of support, broke below that, came to test it as a resistance, giving us an indication. We can definitely expect that pullback to the not the continuation to the downside on the weekly time frame. Similar price action. However, we can see the market closed just below, or had just hit that that level of support there on the close of last week. We can also see that we had this massive impulse, and after that impulse we got a correction to the 0.382. Now when the market hits the 0.382, it's normally an indication that the downward momentum is quite expected on the daily time frame. What do we see? Now we can see here from a daily perspective, the market had tested, rejected that strong level of resistance. The market had also printed support here, resistance here. Once resistance get broken, it becomes support. Now once again, going into next week, we can definitely expect this pullback. Excuse me. We can definitely expect this pullback in the market, and then potentially, once again, see that continuation to the upside, depending on what kind of data the dollar index does print on Wednesday. But the move down is expected, ladies and gentlemen. Next up, we've got AUD USD. Now, starting on the monthly time frame, what do we have? Now, AUD USD, we can see on the monthly time frame, this level over here acted as excuse me, acted as support. Market broke below that, and we had that multiple rejections over there. But we can also see how the market on this monthly time frame printed a W formation. Now normally a W formation is considered a bullish pattern from a technical perspective once it reaches the neckline, but once the neckline gets broken, then we can expect the market to continue, hit the neckline from the bottom up, and then continue lower. We can also see this was a strong level of resistance. The market broke above that, came to test it as support. Support did not hold. The market came back to test it as resistance. Definitely a pullback expected there before any continuation if it need be. Next up, we do have the weekly time frame. Now, from a weekly perspective, I think it's quite clear that this green candle that you see over here has acted as structure. If you look slightly left, you can see this level over here was also a very important structure in the market. Acted here as a level of resistance. Market broke above that, tested as support, broke below that. The resistance did not hold. Market broke above that, came to test it as support, came back, support did not hold, broke below that, came to test it as resistance. The market's now back to test that level as resistance there once again, giving us a further confirmation that we can definitely expect a pullback to that level over there before that continuation to the upside there as well. Now from the daily perspective, what do we see? Now here on the daily time frame, sorry about that guys, I'm just speaking too fast, that's why I'm so out of breath. So yeah, on the daily time frame, what do we see? Now we can see here from a daily perspective that the market had printed a strong level of resistance. Right now there is definitely a pullback expected. However, what we can see over here is that we had this impulse. Now if you take your Fibonacci from the low to the high, you can see we've got a 0.382 that's lining up perfectly there with that structure, so giving us an indication that we can expect this pullback to happen. The continuation will only be decided once we get that fundamental data on Wednesday there again. Next up, we do have Euro USD. Now Euro USD on the monthly time frame, what do we have? Now from a monthly perspective, this is a massive liquidity, an area of liquidity that the market had previously grabbed in the past. Now I can see here, I spoke about this last week as well, and I explained all of the reasons why we can expect that pullback. Now we can definitely expect some more continuation to the upside, but though the market moves in waves, so we can definitely expect a slight pullback before the continuation. Now on the weekly time frame, what do we see? Now from a weekly perspective, we can see that the market, if we do like left to this level over here, excuse me, we can see that the market had slightly broke below that, sorry, broke above that, but that is way too far for us to look back there as well. So what we are going to use as a further confluence is we can see how the market had printed this massive impulse, and we got that correction. Now if you take your Fibonacci there from the high to the low of this massive impulse, you can see we had a 0.50 pullback, and the market had slightly broken above that level. But again, a pullback is expected if any continuation is needed over here. Now we can see here on the daily time frame, price action is a lot easier to read. We can see the market had printed support, broke below that, and it's only testing that level at resistance there once. The market is also stuck within this consolidation phase over here. Now we can see the market had something here, never actually gave us a clear break to tell us which way we want to go. Now I've spoken about the market when I was sitting at this level, explaining all of the reasons why you can expect that move to the upside, and hopefully some of you are taking that move there as well. Now the next move on here is firstly bearish. Why? Because in a consolidation market, the market tends to trade sideways. So going into next week, we can definitely expect this market to continue lower, and then again we should be there by Wednesday, and then from there again, depending on what the fundamental data reads, we could potentially see this meltdown continue to the downside. Next up, we've got Usdcf starting on the monthly time frame. What do we see? Now, I've spoken about this level over here. Now, we had this massive liquidity week here as well, and you can look at last week Forex's breakdown for a further reference. The market came to resistance. There is massive liquidity week to the upside over there, then started to melt to the downside. And we can see how the market is about to come back to test this level here as well. Now, if you drop down on the weekly time frame, what do we see? We had this massive impulse, we had that correction. And if you take your Fibonacci there from the low to the high, you can see the market tested and rejected the 61.8. Now, that's known as the golden ratio. If the market hits the 61.8, there's almost a guarantee that the market is going to pull back. Now, from the daily time frame, we can see that the market had not came to test this level over here. But remember, it's not the job of the market to go and hit that levels there as well. But we can see here that the market had also this level over here acted as a strong level of support. Now the markets had, as you can see, the market had broken below that level. Right now, it's very important that we are reactive. Right, that could be a fake out. It could be just a fake out, and the market wants us to think that it might continue lower. Because why? This is the level over here that I would probably consider myself, break, retest. You would have expected this continuation to the downside for the market to go and hit that level before continuing higher. But I do expect this market once again to pull back into that level, and then it will start this range here as well. So we can expect this market to pull back from exactly where it is now to go and hit that level. And then once again, depending on where we get that data from Wednesday, would we be able to make a decision from there as well. Next up, we've got Usdcad. Usdcad starting on the monthly time frame, we can firstly see Usdcad had broken below strong level of support, came to test the resistance multiple times. The market had also just completed this W formation. After W formation, you expect a pullback to the neckline, which is exactly what we get. So we can definitely expect this pullback or this continuation to the upside there as well. Now, here on the weekly time frame, what do we see? We had this massive impulse. After that impulse, you expect a correction, and once we get that correction, and the best way to measure that is by simply taking your Fibonacci from the high to the low, and you can see we had a 50% pullback. Excuse me. Now, if you drop down on the daily time frame, what do we see? Firstly, we can see how the market is currently testing a strong level of support over here. The market had also broken below this very recent level of support, and once support gets broken, it becomes resistance, giving us a further confirmation that we can definitely expect the market to pull back going into the start of next week, and then from there we need to monitor the price action once again from that level. Now, okay, now that is it from our side, guys. Hope you have a profitable week. Thank you for your time, and as always, cheers for ears.